Is it on?
Problem with taking the shot, my problem is, what I always have a problem with is getting the flu that the shot doesn't protect.
Miss the spring.
Yeah, I mean, this,
Miss the this year,
Good evening, everyone. I'll call this meeting to order of Mayor and Council for the purpose of public hearing on the charter at 6 o'clock. And item A is tab A is public hearing for the proposed charter changes. And we will open up public comment at this time, so anyone wishing to come forward and give public comment, please do so. Not all at once, y'all. And state your name and address for the record.
Mayor Council, Michael Young, 9634 Copeland Drive, Premier Park. I don't have anything specific, but at the last meeting, there were a lot of changes or adjustments proposed to this. And I was wondering, would it be appropriate before the third and final meeting for all those changes and adjustments to be incorporated so we could see the document that you're going to vote on and comment on that document before you vote on it. Otherwise, if you don't do that, otherwise, we'll have our third meeting, and then the document will change after that, and no one will be able to talk about it.
Yeah, that's a very valid point. I took the suggestions that were made at the last meeting. I wanted to wait till after we heard what we were going to hear tonight. I envisioned trying to turn out another document tomorrow or Friday that would, as best I can, incorporate all of the changes that were suggested that there seemed to be some consensus about. I mean, it's still probably not going to be a complete consensus, but it will at least incorporate all those provisions that everybody seemed to say, yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay.
So hopefully tomorrow afternoon or Friday morning.
John Adamek, 3106 Golfers Way. I do have a concern about, at least what I have printed and marked up in red, and that's on page 25, section 9.10, zoning rules. What's marked out in red is what it says, the mayor and council of Little River shall appoint a zoning and planning board and adopt ordinances and regulations for the administration thereof. That's marked out in red. So my question is, are you planning on eliminating the planning and zoning board? Because that's the way that reads. Because the part in blue then says, replacing that shall have the power to adopt the zoning ordinance, which shall set forth the zoning rules and regulations and the zoning map. So my question is, what does that mean?
What it means, John, is that, and I propose that change, is that the city has the power to adopt a zoning ordinance and to create a plan for how we handle zoning. And we've used that power by adopting the Uniform Development Code, which sets forth the creation of the Planning and Zoning Commission, as well as what the zoning process is. What I did is take it out of the charter so that the city doesn't have, it's not restricted to not being able to change the zoning ordinance if we choose to.
Wouldn't that have to go through planning and zoning, then come to the council?
Yeah, yes, as far as changing the zoning ordinance, it would come through the planning commission and then come to the council to change that. So I don't think the process changes any. It's just taking the requirement that we have a zoning and planning board out of the charter, which mandates that we do it. Maybe a year from now, the planning commission comes to us and says, we think that we ought to do it a different way or be called something different. I'd like to have the flexibility to change the zoning ordinance if we choose to. An equivalent is that our charter had a provision in there that said that we were mandated to have a board of zoning appeals, and we took that out of there because we determined that it was redundant and not necessary. The system works well now with zoning and having a planning commission, but Do we want to reserve the flexibility of changing that? I would submit that we do.
David, I forgot about my voice. Sorry, I'll try to be brief. I almost think that what he's talking about, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but they've crossed out in red, the zoning board shall have the authority to establish. I believe what we're really dealing with here is that the state law does not allow a zoning board to make these decisions. Only the city council can.
Correct.
I think there's some confusion that we're trying to eliminate the board when that's really not what we're doing. We're clarifying that the law doesn't allow them to do that anyway. It has to come before us.
Correct.
No, that's exactly right. The way it was worded, the way I interpreted it, it sounded like it was going to eliminate planning and zoning. Planning and zoning commission has never had the ability to make any changes without coming to the council. So
Right, but our charter didn't say that, and this looks like that's what you're trying to do. Right, David?
It is. It is intended to make clear that the mayor and council are the only ones that have the power to, control zoning in the city.
well,
And that's according to state law, right?
So that's not different.
But this does not abolish the planning and zoning board. That exists under our zoning ordinance.
Yeah, that's in the unified development.
Correct.
Thank you, sir. Sir, would you like to make any public comments? Okay, hearing none, we will close this portion of the meeting with a public hearing. And do I hear a motion that we adjourn?
Mr. Mayor, if I
Yes.
could make just a couple of comments from my perspective, and I know there's really not, we're not going to debate any of this tonight, but I'm going to just announce a couple of things. One is that on the section, find it again, about removal of officers. It's on page 18, down at the bottom, section 5.30. Since our meeting the other day, I've taken an additional look at that, and I think the way that it's written in there right now, I'm going to have to make some changes. So I anticipate that I'll be making another proposal to you on that. The thought was, and this is going to be a question that y'all maybe want to have some debate about when you come to the next meeting for y'all to talk about this. But do you want the city council to have the ability to remove each other? Do you want it to be within the power of the council to take action against a fellow council member? And let me try and give you the why I think this is an important policy decision for y'all to consider. Here in Villa Rica, it has not ever been a problem because people have been respectful of each other and you've agreed to disagree about things, and you haven't ever tried to get into power plays whereby the whole thing turns personal and you attempt to hurt somebody who disagrees with you. There have been other cities that I'm familiar with where that hasn't been the case. If I disagree with, what you want to do on a particular issue, rather than just taking a vote and letting it go on, I will attempt to lobby my fellow council members to say, I don't like what person B is doing, so let's say that he or she is doing something wrong and kick him or her off the council. I don't like that thought for Villa Rica, but that's something that we need to figure out an answer to. Do we want to have a process whereby you have the power to take each other off the council? It's a step that I hope we don't go down, but that's a policy decision for y'all.
Well, let me ask a question. If the public, something happened, malfeasance of office or something, what recourse would the public have to remove a council person or mayor?
Well, they'll have the right to try and recall them, which is built into the state law. It's not a simple process, though, for a member of the public to go through that. They got to be really committed. I think what my alternative is going to be is that we build something in that if somebody believes a council person is acting inappropriately, that they have the right to go file a lawsuit to attempt to enforce the provisions of the charter and set forth what they're doing wrong. That too is a little bit of a cumbersome process. But the policy decision is, do you make it a somewhat cumbersome process to make it a serious process so that people are not taking it lightly and just, I don't like you this week, so if I can kick you out, I'll try.
This is just my opinion, but the reason I asked that is because I did look at that, and I thought, the public put us all here, and really the public should be the one to take us out, in my opinion. I don't know if we should have that right. That's just an opinion, but as long as there's a provision in there, and there is by state law that a recall could take place. I just don't want it to appear that we're trying to turf guard ourselves, because we're not. All we're saying is that we're putting the power of recall back in the hands of the people that put the elected officials in place.
Well, I'm not appropriate to raise it in this meeting, but we all know of examples of cities where it is a never-ending turf war amongst council members, and those cities, have every appearance of being dysfunctional, and I hope and pray that that'll never happen here. And I'd like to try and build in some mechanisms to try and not let that be a possibility.
Are you suggesting to take out?
I think I'm going to try and propose something a little bit different, not a whole lot different, but a little bit different from what's in here.
I don't like the fact that it comes down to just 3 members of the council can vote to remove it, because it says of the remaining, so there's only 4 remaining and it only takes 3 of them to vote. That's, I think it ought to take supermajority if we keep it in there at all. Should be unanimous for the other members.
Okay, so I mentioned I'm going to work on that a little bit more to come up with some proposals.
A question regarding this, you talk about the public being able to recall a council person, but can you only recall as a public the person in your ward, or can you recall any council person?
I think you can recall any council person, but it's a legitimate question, John, that I don't know the answer to as to whether or not the vote on the recall is restricted to just the people in that ward. Probably is. Yeah.
Good question.
It says 25% of the ward, I think it's referring to in line 3.
Yeah, but to your point, Mayor, if the public elects somebody, even if that somebody turns out to be doing all sorts of questionable things that nobody else likes, still the public put him or her in there, they ought to be the ones to have to live with the consequences of their choice up until the next election time or something really serious happens. Now there are provisions built into state law. If you get indicted for a felony, then state law is going to take you out. It doesn't have to be the local law that does that. But
I don't know that I wouldn't recommend just taking it out. As long as there's a provision in there, which there is. That's my opinion.
okay, that was just one thing I wanted to raise, and I'll try and crank out a draft. There's still going to be a few choices for you to make, but we can whittle it down. Councilman McDougal came up with a couple of good points that he made to me that I'm going to incorporate. For example, just the issue of appeals out of the municipal court. I had it written in there that it was just to go to the Carroll County Superior Court, and rightfully it ought to go to whichever Superior Court or wherever the offense occurred. So if you got a speeding ticket on Mirror Lake Boulevard, you want to appeal that, you need to go to Douglas County to do it. That's
Ms.
all.
Carter, did you want to, we just had public comment, so if you want to come up, we're still in that portion. If
No,
This is gonna be a really quick meeting, so if you... Okay, any other
I
comments?
had something that I, going back rereading, and, well, one of them is what I thought about when the charter was proposed. You know, it usually was just men on the council. So where you got council men or just got men, or could you put council members or
I brought that up.
a council?
Yeah,
something?
I've already gotten my assistant to plug all that in. Everything will read just council member. And I think we've added in every place there was a he or a him. We've added in a she or a her.
They.
And so and then I added in a phrase to say that, you know, if there are any references to gender, that's wholly unintentional, and that
Oh, yeah.
every gender is included.
And another one on page 10, where it's talking about the top part up there. What is it? C, where it's talking about the veto. You got 3 members that vote on a certain thing, an item. So my question, I guess, is, since you got 3 that voted in, why you have to have 4 to override a veto? Is that a state law, or that's part of the Constitution?
No, that is not a state law. That's just been the law here in Villa Rica, and it is the law in most jurisdictions that have a veto power, is that to override a veto, you ought to have something more than what it took to pass the legislation to begin with. Otherwise, the veto means nothing anyway. You'd be wasting your time for a mayor to, if an action passed by a 3-2 vote and the mayor vetoed it, then, you know, the mayor is wasting everybody's time, because it's probably going to pass 3-2 again. But it might not pass 4-1. Or it may have passed, you know, if 2 people are absent, it may have passed by a 2-1 vote. And
So therefore, is just something thrown in there?
it is put in there in order to signify that the council has gone an extra step to put it into place over the veto of the mayor.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'd be a little bit curious about that. There are cities where I just saw this the other day at GMA. So there are cities where the mayor has a veto, but that veto really triggers a reconsideration. So you have to bring it up at the next meeting, or, you know, some specially scheduled meeting. And we don't know that it would always go like that. We just saw a veto of an item that passed 5-0 that couldn't muster 4 votes.
Right.
So, I mean, why wouldn't we consider that? Aren't we a strong council form of government? Isn't this a council manager form of government?
I'm not telling you
I'm not
you
saying
can't
about
consider.
the considering. I'm saying that might be a point to think about.
It is, and if that's the
And-
consensus y'all come to, then there's nothing wrong with that.
I'd be curious, Jeff, if you have any comments on that, what you think about that.
As far as a supermajority to override a veto,
Right.
I mean, I think it's there for a reason. I think there should be a supermajority, because, as David said, I mean, otherwise you could have 3-2 votes that, you know, there would be no chance to override the veto. If I go to the point, and I can only speak to me, but if I go to the trouble of vetoing something, which I've already admittedly told you I wouldn't do, unless I felt very strongly about it, then I feel like it should be something more than just a simple majority to override it.
So a simple is 3 and a super is 4. That's what you're saying?
If everybody's present.
I just, you know, but I was just curious as to, like you said, we never done it. I don't guess it's ever questioned, and I
I never
haven't
thought
seen
too much about it until we started reviewing the the charter, and I was surprised to look at other cities and found out that it's very often that there is no veto. For example, Carrollton, there's no veto power. Valdosta, I mean, every city that I looked at either had no veto or they had a veto that triggered a reconsideration. And I wonder if that might have something to do with smaller cities, since this hasn't been looked at in so long. You know, in 2000, we were 4,100 people. And now, today, we're near 15 or 16,000. Each representative up here represents some 3,000 people. If 3 of them vote for something, that's a representation of 9,000 people from the various wards through the city. That seems pretty significant to me. To force it to be 12,000 people seems like a pretty high standard. I think it's worth looking at.
Well, I would just tell you as the mayor, if you're going to consider that, then I would ask that you consider giving the mayor the power to vote then.
I think that is an option, because he's right. He doesn't really have, we've talked about this. I mean, somebody came up to me after the last meeting. They said that someone had said to them, I thought you and Jeff were friends. We are friends. I'm considering something in this charter. I'm considering something that's going to last far beyond this. He needs to have some kind of a vote, so maybe we'll look at it another way. Maybe we don't at all. I'm sorry for my voice. Let me do one more thing. Let's go back to, we were talking about removing a council member. I haven't thought a whole lot about this, because I think that is something, seems kind of, I think we need to really consider whether or not we're going to have that happen. But I think the alternative, which is a recall, is near impossible. I mean, if you mention the word recall, any public member who is familiar with that is going to start laughing. That is an incredible burden to put on folks. So I would say, let's at least get some options, David. At least take a look at it and see if you can come to us with some kind of options. I think we all would say that the members on this council wouldn't do anything like that just to be vindictive or abusive. So it might be worth at least getting some options.
Yeah, I
I think
agree.
while we're doing this, it's okay to have a discussion about everything. I don't think anything should be off the table.
Question for you, David, please. We have in our specific power, it says to condemn property inside and outside.
Right.
When would we ever do inside or outside?
We might condemn property outside the city if you wanted to build a lake, outside the city, and to go out and condemn property to take land to build a lake, to, I can't think of all the examples of it, but if you needed to build a lift station that might be right outside the city in order to, make the flow be right.
Could you tell me where that is in here? 'Cause that's
On page-
important.
Page 2, number 7,
Okay, specific powers. that the
specific
state
powers.
reserved to the city.
Corporate powers of the government of the city of Villa Rica.
Okay.
And our water sources are all outside the city limits.
That's why I think
FYI.
that's important.
So you can just go take somebody's land if you want. Or do you have to have a?
You have to have a
specific
reason, you have to have you have
Well,
to
I
have
know
a
you
valid
have
reason.
reason, but
But yeah, the answer to your question is yes. If there is a public justification for it, that it's important to the public to take somebody's land, you can do it. You should exercise that power very, very conservatively, would be my opinion. You don't do it unless you have to, but occasionally you have to.
Have you done that on this council?
Have we ever had to condemn land outside? No, because
Inside?
we've always been successful in just negotiating for it.
How would that go over with the county? Because you're going out into the county outside the city.
I think that there is a provision that if you condemn land outside the city, you have to give the county notice of it. And there's some mechanism that they have to voice an objection if they have one.
There's been some discussion about that with regard to the Clean Water Act that we've had in other public meetings. here. So I
We,
understand that provision.
There are going to be some limitations on that. We can't go decide that we want to condemn a beach on Jekyll Island and call it Villarica Public Beach. There'd be some court proceedings that would stop us from doing that.
but I can
But
only,
if we had to go a mile outside of the city to condemn a spot of land to put a lift station, I think we could do it.
well, and I think this was probably in here because of the fact that our lakes are in the county. They're not in incorporated Villarica. So if something were to happen, they were to change ownership, and the folks that bought into it said, you know, we don't want to honor that agreement, or we're not going to give you the easement across property that perhaps there wasn't an easement in the future, I mean, right now that existed, then that would be important.
Okay, number 22 on page 3, to provide for destruction and removal of any building or structure which may become dangerous or detrimental to the public.
For you,
Page 3, bottom of 22.
22.
Yeah, we've always had that power. We have it now. You have the ability to use it through the ordinances that you create. And we have some ordinances that allow us to destroy and remove buildings.
Well, I agree with it totally. I guess the ordinance that's there, we've had several discussions about, one of great length about a house that burned in Fullerville that was just, well, it was a mess, and they walked away from it, and it's been the same way now for a long, long time, probably as many as 10 years. And yet, the people around it, the person left, they don't know where he went, but the people around it want to do something about it, and we're trying to figure out, using this method, the city can do something with it. Okay. Would that be under ordinances, or?
Yes, under our ordinances, we have the power to do that. Sometimes we haven't always done it as aggressively as we could have, but a lot of that's been due to turnover over the years, and there's even though we have the power to do that, there's a great opportunity to make some huge mistakes by exercising that power. The best one I can think of was the county thinking that they could go down and tear down a half burned down house when they didn't really have the permission to do it, and they ended up having to pay a pretty significant sum for tearing down somebody's house that they didn't have the permission to tear down.
Okay, last for me, on page 4, number 31. This pertains to the jail sentences in the municipal court. If we can add or take away some verbiage in there that we all having concern with about people that are given sentences, including working for the city, picking up garbage or things of that nature, but they choose to go to other municipalities, namely Douglasville or Carrollton or Buchanan or just outside the city. Can we add verbiage to this to make sure that the judge can only sentence them to the community service in the city? Or should we?
You can, but I would argue against that.
Okay, I'm just asking the question. I don't,
I would tell you from the position, I'm speaking not as a Villarica municipal judge, but you need to leave the judge the flexibility to make that decision. I mean, the council can express that we'd rather have people do it here in Villarica as our top priority, but there are circumstances where the judge needs to be able to let them do it somewhere else. Most of those people don't have driver's licenses anymore. And if you're going to make them to drive back from Arkansas to Villarica to do their community service work, then you're just declaring that they're not going to do it.
okay, but it says now to provide the persons given jail sentences in municipal court shall work out such sentence in any public works or on the streets, roads, drains, and the squares in the city. So it pretty much mandates.
That's a good point. That
Or-
that does need
There's
to
an
be
or
changed.
there.
It says
There's an
or.
Or,
Okay.
continue on.
And since I just took the class on municipal law at GMA, the Mayor's Day Conference, there's a difference. We can set fine limits, but we can't tell the judge how to impose those, is that correct, David?
It's right.
That's state law.
But even if we were gonna give some kind of guidance like that, we wouldn't do it in the charter anyway, we'd do it in an ordinance.
Right.
Charter is like a constitution, this is where we derive the power for all of our ordinances.
That's
So we
ex-
want this to have some specificity, but we want it to give us some flexibility outside of it so that it still fits in this confine.
Yep.
I know nobody wants to hear that.
Mhm.
I won't want to listen to it later, I'm sorry. I forget till I start talking.
Oh, we got another audience member.
Ma'am, since you didn't get a chance to come up and speak as far as the charter, would you like to come forward and? I'm just,
Give public comment.
Oh, she got your cold, huh?
anybody else have any comments? So we're gonna try to have all the changes, David's gonna work on that, and that's a good point, so that, when we look at it, we'll have a better understanding of what we're voting on. And, again, realizing that there may be some last minute changes. I know a couple of council persons today, now you've got me conscious of saying person, councilman, council, they were meeting at City Hall, and I appreciate all the effort everybody's put into it. Y'all are a great group to work with, and I appreciate that. Sir, could you come to the mic so we,
State your name and address.
I'm
The
just,
way
I'm just
we,
kidding.
I will tell you, our
I'm just
charter
kidding.
specifies like this.
Every change individually. Because one thing that I would recommend is you at least consider that, and you consider not passing on to the legislature anything that's not 5-0.
Oh, I,
If you do that, and you only send them 5-0 changes, I think you've got a lot better chance of getting it passed. And if you do less than that, then you run the risk of stuff happening. Because once you let it out of here, you're out of control of it. You have no, I mean, they can, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they can even change
They can, yeah.
without your permission. So,
You're 100% right. If we don't send something out 5-0, then we don't need to send it at all.
He's suggesting that we take each change and vote on each change and not include that change, that red line item, unless it was a 5-0.
Well, I mean, what I envision is, again, I'm going to turn out another red line version, but I'm also going to have a clean version to go with that. And once y'all go through on the issues that are, in contention, if you will, or if there's some debate about it, I think y'all do need to vote on those individually. But then that needs to be incorporated into a final clean document that everybody approves 5-0.
Sure, I agree.
And we'll send that document in, otherwise hold it, because we don't want to let people start making decisions for us.
I agree. We vote on the changes, and then once we get into agreement on that, we vote on the whole charter.
that's very similar to what we did with the parks and budget. If you think what we did at the library, we bought
mhm.
personnel changes, capital items, and y'all sort of gave us a strong vote. One after another after another. I think that works you toward a consensus better than just waiting and not voting the whole thing at once.
Anything else?
I remember when we sent up the senior citizens homestead exemption, language in that was changed.
Right.
And
It sure was.
I remember thinking, how did this happen? So I would hate to see that happen here. So I think that's a great idea.
Anything else?
When is the next hearing? When is
Ma'am?
the next hearing?
Yeah, the next meeting,
The next meeting is,
No,
29th, 30th.
Yeah, 30th, if necessary, call council work session for planning and zoning commission, have a meeting at 6 o'clock.
What day is that? Tuesday?
Tuesday.
Do it 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock? Did you say 3 o'clock?
Well, their meeting is 6.
I mean, I don't,
That's our regular work session.
yeah. Next Thursday is our regular work session, so I mean,
She said Tuesday night. She's saying Tuesday night.
February 1st is the work session.
Yeah.
We have a special meeting for this on the 30th.
Well, it just said the proposed schedule that they come up with said call council work session if necessary to reach final budget. on the 30th.
Yeah, I don't think there's a problem with amending that so that you have the next meeting and discussion about this on the work session day, and then actually vote on the final clean copy on the February meeting day,
Which is the 6th.
February 6th. Yeah, I was trying to get it all done by the end of the month, but I don't know that it's gonna be critical that we do it, by January 31st as opposed to February 6th.
Okay,
I think we still got plenty of time.
when are you gonna have your latest outline, red line?
Tomorrow or Friday. So that you'll have it for essentially a week before.
Tuesday at 3 o'clock. Just going along with the schedule we already have, I think could we do that?
On the 30th,
Work session, easier if you do that, if you do this on Tuesday, not on Thursday.
Because planning and zoning has a 6 PM meeting. So if we do 3 o'clock, I'm sure we'll be out of here. I'm surprised we're here this long tonight, honestly. Berlin had too many items.
Oh, that's only 3 of them.
I'm just-
Wait till you get the biggest list.
So if he gives it to us on the 26th, that gives us 1, 2, 3, about 4 days to look it over.
so you saying the 30th at 3 o'clock? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, ma'am, Tuesday.
He said
I'm just
Tuesday.
throwing it out there.
I mean, I said the 30th. I didn't say Thursday. I said the 30th.
I'm sorry, I thought you
That's
said
it.
Thursday.
No, I said, so y'all saying the 30th? Oh, 30th.
At 3 o'clock.
Is that what
And
y'all
then
saying?
we also gonna have a call meeting on the Thursday work session day. Are we gonna need one then?
I think what I heard David say was there's not a need to have it on the 30th, that we can just have it on our work session date and not have it on the 30th. Is that what you said?
I would envision that on the work session day, you go through and make that, point by point vote on what you want to include or
Yeah, all night.
or not have in there, so that between next Thursday and then the next Tuesday, that we'll have a clean copy ready to actually vote on.
Okay, we gonna have the call meeting before or after the work session?
Up to y'all.
What I would, again, there was a meeting that was tentatively scheduled for the 30th, which is next Tuesday.
Yeah.
Okay, what David had said was that we can do the discussion about the charter on our council work session meeting, which is next Thursday, which is 2
Right.
days from that.
Right.
So there wouldn't be a need to have another one until our meeting on Tuesday night, which is our normally scheduled council meeting, to vote on it.
So, if we're gonna put a call meeting on Thursday, it's gotta be separate from the work session. It's either gonna be before or after the work session.
But
No,
I
it
think
needs-
that they would actually, I mean, I would anticipate they'd actually need to vote on a few things about put this provision into the final charter draft or not. And that,
So we will be voting, we have to have a call meeting, so
correct.
we're either gonna have to do it before or after, so we still need the work session.
What do y'all want to do?
And you saying they was talking about voting item by item?
How long do you think that'll take, David?
I don't think you're voting on a large number. I think that there are probably, just from my looking through the draft, there's probably 10 items that, I'm just guessing that it's about 10 items that y'all really need to make a decision on. For example, you need to decide whether or not you got to have a supermajority to override a veto. That's a pretty discrete, definite point that y'all need to come to a consensus on. If you can't, then we know we don't need to send it in.
Well,
If you can come up with one, then I can put it in the final draft for you to vote on it at your regular meeting on the next Tuesday.
the problem I see is we come in here and vote item by item, and if we don't come up on one item with a 5-0 vote, we got a problem on that item.
Well, you got a problem to the extent that you need to spend more time working through that.
Yeah, so that could mean another meeting between the kind of the work session day and the regular meeting day.
Well, at some point, you run out of time for this.
I know it.
I
We
mean,
are.
and
So maybe we do need that Tuesday 3 o'clock meeting to try to run through it.
What's the will of the council?
I like to see it on Tuesday, 3 o'clock,
Try to vote then.
correct? And then that'll give David a chance to do all the things he's got to do. And then we'll have the work session on Thursday. And then the council meeting on the next Tuesday.
I think you still need to call a meeting on Thursday with the work session, because if there's a problem on Tuesday, he has to correct it, then we got to re-vote on that item.
That's fine, but we can call that on Wednesday if we need it. If we need it.
do that.
So it's not, we don't need to set up and say we're gonna have a call meeting on Thursday for it or after the work session, my opinion now. We can do that same thing on Wednesday and do exactly
I agree
what
with
needs to be
that.
done.
I agree
Is
with
that
that.
okay?
Tuesday,
needed,
3 o'clock,
Wednesday.
Thursday, 3 o'clock.
Well, you can't really have, it'd have to be 24 hours to have another call meeting if we go
Well,
from
but-
Tuesday to Wednesday. So if we finish at 4 o'clock, that means the next meeting will have to be at 4 o'clock if we get the
Okay.
word, get it out to the media.
Alyssa, could you bring a called meeting form with us to the meeting on Tuesday? If we need it, we'll do it here.
Call meeting.
Call meeting on,
Tuesday's a call meeting, and after that meeting, you would decide if you need a call meeting.
Right.
Correct.
That's correct.
And it would have, yeah.
Okay.
Tuesday the 30th.
Yes, ma'am.
That's what y'all saying.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me so I can
That's
know.
3
Yes,
30.
ma'am. The 30th
Okay.
at 3 p.m.
At 3 p.m.
3 p.m.
Okay.
Call meeting.
See, I have to put it in my,
And then we'll determine
mhm.
everything else after that.
As long as I get the first one in there, that's all I need.
Anything else? Okay, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Have a motion made by Councilman Marchman, seconded by Councilman
We don't-
Best.
We don't even have to do this. We didn't make a motion to go in.
Is that correct? I mean, we'll just stop?
We certainly didn't make a motion to start.
Okay.
We better safe than sorry. Okay, go
All right,
ahead.
y'all-
Carry it through.
This was not a call meeting.
We are adjourned.